Joining us now are Nerdcore hip-hop legends and pioneers, MC Lars and Schaffer the Darklord. How's it going, guys?
Going so well. Thank you so much for having us.
So since 1999, Lars has been making awesome genre-bending music, integrating elements of ska, hip-hop, and punk with a witty sense of humor and nerd culture references. MC Lars is open for a wide variety of iconic acts such as Snoop Dogg, Bowling for Soup, Insane Clown Posse, T-Pain, and the Aquabats. He even started his own label, Horus Records, in 2004.
Yeah, and alongside Lars is New York City-based artist and comedian Schaffer the Darklord, known for his over-the-top stage persona and dark sense of humor. Schaffer is just a staple of the nerd music community and has performed alongside some of the scene's biggest acts, such as I Fight Dragons, MC Frontalot, Mega Ran, and many more. You guys are now just teaming up to deliver the new concept album 999, an epic 11-song project that focuses on the darker occult side of the Disney mythos, and this drops February 9th. So we're huge fans of both of you and super honored to have the two of you on our show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those intros were awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So backing up a bit, what was some of the music and pop culture that you guys were into when you were kids that inspires your work today?
It was weird. I was a kid. Obviously, I grew up on hardcore Star Wars fan. And so that seems to be the thing that my instincts would say to reference, because that's a nerd culture touchstone that everybody can relate to. But when I was a little kid, I was really obsessed with horror films, and I was raised by a single mother who didn't censor anything from me. So I grew up like just getting to watch all of these like really gory horror films and really like explicit stand-up comedy records. And I feel like that stuff really had probably a larger influence on me artistically than Star Wars. I love Star Wars and I'm still a lifelong fan, but watching Friday the 13th movies as a little kid and listening to George Carlin and Richard Pryor records as a little kid probably had much more of a lasting impact on me artistically.
And musically, what are some of your favorite albums?
I'm such a hardcore Beastie Boys fan, and I will stand the Beastie Boys until my last breath. But I loved a lot of stuff, and I loved a lot of I grew up listening to a lot of my dad's and my older brother's records. So I grew up loving a lot of psychedelic stuff like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath.
I grew up loving a lot of comics and kind of alternative underground comics like Life in Hell, which was Matt Groening's strip before The Simpsons. And I loved how he would take these simple characters and use them to convey these really interesting, profound human truths. And it was so cool that these artists and storytellers who created things on their own had a way of connecting with the world, and that led to The Simpsons. So comics, obviously, music like Weird Al, who all nerdcore rappers love and idolize. He was a big influence, but I was also a jazz nerd. I grew up loving Miles Davis and playing guitar in jazz band, and a real music nerd, and using that as an inspiration to start doing my punk band and other stuff. So that kind of weird, very loner kind of culture, and video games. I remember making beats on Mario Paint for Super Nintendo.
That's cool.
So that was my first way to program, do music, with a synthesizer.
When did each of you sort of start making your own music and the nerdcore thing? And how did you originally find out about the other nerdcore rappers and each other?
When I was in college, I was playing drums in a metal band, and I lived with all of the members of the band in a house. So we all had we just rented this 5-bedroom house, and we all had our own rooms. And then in the basement was where we rehearsed. We had all of our recording equipment. And it was during that time that we'd all started learning the very basics of multi-track recording. So we had microphones set up all the time. We had a number of 4 tracks and 8 tracks of very old, tape to tape gear. But that's how we learned, the basics of recording. And I would sneak down there after my bandmates had gone to sleep and record rap songs, because I was embarrassed, because we were all such college age music snobs. So I would be like, hey guys, we should do something that has some rap elements in it. And they would be like, no, absolutely not. So they became my own little secret dirty little secret project in the basement. And I did that for years until I eventually had enough material that I wanted to start putting it on stage. When I did, I didn't really have a community or know any other artists who were doing it. I just kind of kept touring with rock bands, because that'd been my only introduction to indie music. I don't think I realized that there was this community called Nerdcore until maybe 2005 or 2006, when some people who were members of this online forum just reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're one of us." And I was like, well, actually, all of my songs are about like Satan and the end of the world and skulls and stuff. And they were like, "Yeah, you wear glasses. You're one of us." And that was it. And then after, over time, I just met all these people who have continued to be like these lifelong friends, including MC Lars.
What about you, Lars? How'd you sort of link up with the whole nerdcore scene?
Yeah, I mean, I had been playing in punk bands and ska bands and hardcore bands, and so I would open for these bands. Similarly, like as Schaffer was explaining, like I'd play bass, and then I'd record my Lars stuff, and then sometimes they'd need an opener, and so I'd be like, "Well, I'll do it," and like play these little basement shows where I'm rapping. And people are like, "Okay, this is the fun thing that you do." But that started getting more attention and excitement than any of my bands. So I was like, "Well, I'll keep doing this." So I went to college, and I had a radio show at Stanford, like a hip hop show in college. And this dude, it's interesting. Like, I'll never forget this. This guy used to always come to the show, and he was like a high school kid. He'd hang out in the back and bring me CDRs and stuff. And he was like, "Dude, you need to check out this thing called Nerdcore." And I was like, "What is it?" And this was like 2003. He's like, "Well, it's like nerdy people rapping over beats about computers and Star Wars." And MC Chris was on the mix, and he spelled it like this, like NXC. I don't know if that's backwards, but like hardcore or straight edge has the X in the middle. So it's like nerdcore. So it was that guy through that. That was like 2003. And then I met Frontalot and Schaffer and all these people. Cause I did shows with them. Cause I was doing stuff with pop punk bands and like in the Warped Tour world. And that was like its own thing. And then I started linking with these guys, and I realized that the shows were more fun, and we sold more merch when we teamed up. So why not do it?
So as we said earlier, your new album 999 drops February 9th, and we had the honor of listening to it before the release, and it is just totally awesome.
Oh, thank
This
you.
album, yeah, it's great. It's like awesome because it features aspects from the bigger Disney titles such as The Haunted Mansion and Nightmare Before Christmas and Pinocchio and stuff like that. But it also has some cool lesser known stuff in there as well, like The Black Cauldron and Journey into Imagination. So how did this project come about, and where'd you get all the inspiration from?
We did a tour together in February of 2020, which was right before COVID hit. And the tour ended in Orlando. And since it had been a very successful tour and we'd had a great time, we decided to celebrate with the next day before we went home. We went to Disney World. Lars had been several times. I'd never been to a Disney park at that point, but we went. I'd always wanted to, I just never had. And so we went there, and Lars was like, "Oh, we have to go on the Haunted Mansion ride. You're going to love it. It's spooky. It's great." And he was so excited about it. And we went on the ride, and I was just blown away. Even like as an adult, I mean, I wasn't even a kid, and I was still had that like childlike wonder. It was so exciting. And then we talked about it all day and kept referencing it. So after we got home from the tour, COVID hit. We all went into lockdown. We started doing live stream shows, but Lars and I kept talking about this experience that we'd had at Disney World. And he had suggested that we write a concept album about the Haunted Mansion and dig into all of the characters and all of the lore of it. So I think we started with a song called No Windows, No Doors. That's about the Haunted Mansion. And I think it was not long after that, we were like, well, maybe we should expand this concept a little bit. It's going to be kind of hard to write an album's worth of material just about this one amusement park ride. And so we just expanded it, and he'd suggested we do an album about the dark, occult, or upsetting elements in the Disney universe. And we were thrilled to learn that there is no shortage of dark, occult, or upsetting elements in the Disney universe that is provided great fodder for some hip hop songs.
Like, I mean, like I think it's the second track, but Rated G for Trauma, which was one of the singles you guys dropped.
Yeah.
You know, that's such an awesome song, because it's like these Disney movies, like that messes up kids. This stuff is really dark, real deep. Like even the stuff that isn't about like spooky things, it's still like got some crazy dark things to hit kids with. So I think it's really an awesome album.
One of my favorite songs on the album was the one about Pinocchio, the Pleasure Island one, because when I was younger and I saw that scene, that really messed me up, because it's so creepy and surreal when they're turning into the donkeys. And at the point when I was watching that movie, I had seen like Alien and like rated R movies.
Sure.
that did not hit as hard as the Pinocchio scene.
It just
Like-
comes out of nowhere. It's so
Yeah.
sudden and it's so
Yeah.
surreal and upsetting. And yeah.
And the little one who's crying for his mom, like Schaefer, I
Oh.
was at Schaefer's apartment. We were doing a photo shoot, and we watched the scene again, and it was like he's in the process, and he wants his mommy. It's so sad.
It's so dark.
So, like, what was your creative process like for this record? Like, so what were all the steps between like paving the path from songwriting to recording to mixing? Like, how did it all go?
We had to like narrow down our ideas. We had to figure out if we were going to do Star Wars and Muppets and all the tangential stuff. And we're like, no, let's just pretty much focus on Disney. And then we like made a long spreadsheet of all our ideas, and we just kept adding to it. And we did all the vocals on like demo beats. And then our friend Richard, we sent the final vocals. We do the demos, then we'd make sure everything was cool. Then we sent him the vocals and then coordinate the musical parts, and then he'd mix it and we'd listen to it. And then we had like a guitarist who was in the studio doing parts. So it was all remote pretty much, but we were talking a lot. Like we'd Zoom, Schaffer and I would Zoom to talk about the record.
We were doing it remotely. We were sending each other notes, and then we would record our own parts at home and send them to the other one and be like, here's what I'm thinking for this, and kind of send notes and feedback back and forth before we would ultimately like put together a demo and send it to our guy Rich. But it was all done remotely. We saw each other in person a number of times during the process, but we would mostly just like kind of talk about the work we'd been doing.
Most of the production, yeah, that's Richard. I mean, we some of the stuff we did some of the production on, but it's always an interesting thing working with a third producer, because like sometimes giving less instruction is better. Richard is Richard worked on, he's mastered like a lot of stuff for like Coolio and De La Soul and Soul and Mike.
Wow.
He's done a lot of really cool records. So he's very knowledgeable of music history. So like we'd give him a few song references, and then he'd be like, well, what if you tried this? So yeah.
Once we would we'd start writing the songs, we would find kind of temporary beats online that we would just use as a reference, and maybe send it to Richard with some vocals over it and be like, this is the kind of energy we're thinking for this song, or this kind of vibe. And he would either go in a completely different direction and surprise us and change the vibe of the song, and we would love it, or he would actually attempt to match that kind of energy. He would never try to like recreate any melodies or instrument sounds, but he was really good. If I give him like a list of adjectives, he would like kind of nail those. On the Tinkerbell song specifically, I remember like, I just want to sound like it's like made of broken toys. Like I for as long as I've been playing music, I don't speak in very explicit music terms. I use really ridiculous things like make it sound like it's made of broken toys, or I think another song I was like, I want the vibe to feel like a drunken duck. And like and like Richard is great because not only did he continue talking to me after I would send him a message like that, but he would just nail it every time.
Who are some of your biggest influences on this new album specifically? I mean, I hear a lot of like Insane Clown Posse and stuff like that. But what are some of your other influences?
I know I'm going to be like, I'm like repeating myself here, but I've always been a huge fan of the Beastie Boys. Ever since I first heard them. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do was I've always had this dream of recording a song using this technique that like Rick Rubin famously used with them in the studio on their first album. And that is when they were young, they didn't write their parts. Like, you know, they would finish each other's lines, but they didn't write the songs plotted out as so like, yo, I'm going to say the first half of this line, you say the second part of this line. Instead of doing that, they would record all of the parts. They would each one of them would record the entire song, and then they would go in and chop it up that way. And I'd always wanted to do that. So once we had finished a draft of the lyrics for Pleasure Island, we both went through and recorded the entire song. And then I took the vocal stems and chopped them up and made like back and forth parts. We sent those to the engineer or a producer who like mixed them with the track. And then once we had those isolated, then we could go in and re-record those individual parts. But that's like just this weird little nerdy fanboy recording thing that I've always wanted to do. And I'd never had an opportunity. And since at that point in the record, we were really starting to play around with like some different like genres of music. I was like, hey, you know, if this song is going to have kind of a Beastie Boys approach to it, let's do this Beastie Boys production thing I've always wanted to try. And wow, it really worked. It was awesome. I was so pleased with how it worked out.
You know, I really like the South Florida group, the Suicide Boys, and like a lot of people in that scene, Fat Nick, Puya, like just that, like a lot of people, because I do the Gathering of the Juggalos, and like that's a fun scene. But there's always interesting rappers on the main stage or the side stage that are doing very like dark, edgy, cool stuff. Some of it's problematic, some of it's whatever. But like the flows of these younger generation of these underground, then it's really cool. People who are influenced by all sorts of different raps. So yeah, Suicide Boys though, I love how the dynamic of this, how those two guys play off each other. So I try to capture the energy with Schaffer because like we have different timbres in our voice, but we also do certain things similarly. So I was trying to listen to like, okay, is he doing a more bassy cadence or what? And so yeah, that was fun to work on because during pandemic I listened to a lot of those guys while I was jogging. So that influenced me.
So on the new album, you collaborate with a lot of awesome musicians, such as JT Music, who does a bunch of the FNAF songs, fellow nerdcore rappers, such as the Stupendium and MC Snacks, alongside with Ash Tellum. So what were these people like to work with? Like, how did these collabs work?
Well, I'll tell the JT Music story real quick. They came to our show in North Carolina because they're doing a documentary about the history of nerdcore. Because they're like probably one of the biggest groups in like the YouTube Gen 2 nerdcore. So they came and hung out with us, and they're really dope. And so I was like, "Look, we're doing this song for the Roger Rabbit 35th anniversary. Would you maybe do this verse?" And they were so nice. They did it for free. They're like, keep all the royalties. And they were just real sweet about it. Not that it's like weird to ask for royalties, but they just were like, we want to give back because you guys helped start this genre. So that was dope. Stupendium, I met them through, I guess just through online, being a fan of their work. And Snacks is a rapper from Canada who opened for us in Columbus on the last tour, who we really like. And he's dope. And Ash Tellum is my wife. So
okay.
She raps too.
Okay, that's neat. I sort of thought it was her because I kind of like recognized her from like that Christmas card you emailed us last year.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
I don't want to like sort of assume or anything.
This is
that's neat. So
I keep the foot on my desk. That's
So what are some people either of you would want to collaborate with in the future?
It's weird when I get asked a question like this and Lars is present. I feel like I'm going to start naming people that he actually has collaborated with. Like there's a part of me deep down that's like still kind of envious that like Lars did a track with Kool Keith, who's one of my favorite rappers of all time because he's just a nut, and all of his stuff is so very surreal and stream of consciousness. But then Lars gave him an assignment and he like nailed the assignment too, which made me especially like impressed. So Kool Keith is somebody that I've always like really kind of daydreamed about working with.
This is a random one, but there's this prank caller dude called Longmont Potion Castle who does metal music and prank calls. He's from Denver or from Colorado, and I want to do a project with him because he's just so bizarre, like a musical metal project with him. But in the rap world, I don't know. I mean, I used to want to work with Kanye, but not so much now. But
Yeah, makes sense.
He's a great producer. Rick Rubin, for Sky's the Limit, Dre,
Sure,
people like that, like some of the old hip hop legends. Yeah, but I've been fortunate to work with a lot of my heroes, like KRS-One and Weird Al and like Kool Keith. Very lucky. I never thought I'd get to work with those people, so that's tight.
Yeah, I mean, you even had like my favorite song of yours, like you have Perry Grip and Paul Gilbert.
Oh yeah,
like that's so crazy.
Yeah, that was cool. That was through my Bowling for Soup. Those guys hooked that up. So my connections with those guys. So that's cool. The pop punk world is very sweet.
You also did a track with Gabe Saporta from Cobra Starship.
Yeah, that happened. We played this festival in London, and it was like the biggest this festival. This called Give It a Name. It's no longer there anymore, but like Paramore and all these stuff. And Cobra Starship was there, and their dressing room was next to us. And I'm always just so fearless. So I just knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm MC Lars. Can't wait to hear your set." And they were like, "Oh, this guy's friendly." So then when Gabe was on Warped Tour in San Francisco, he came to the studio after their set and recorded those vocals just because I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Sure. He's a cool dude. Like, yeah, I love that guy. That was tight.
Yeah, Cobras are a great band. Like, and it's neat to see that they're getting back together too, because they've been sort of out of it for a while.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for the When We Were Young, in like October, they're doing the full Viva La Cobra album. So
oh, wow.
Down over in Vegas. I won't be able to go because it's far away. But
where are you guys based?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yeah.
Okay, cool.
you've both been a part of the nerdcore scene for a while now, and it began around the turn of the millennium. So, what's it like watching it grow and evolve since you've been a part of it?
I think it's been exciting. I've really loved seeing it, especially like it's there's like the version of nerdcore that we were a part of, and now there's like this kind of new generation of nerdcore, which is a lot of like anime raps, YouTube videos. But even with in our community, I thought it was really great, because when we first started, and we were first like kind of doing like the nerdcore music festivals, it was disappointingly a very like white male scene. Like, I know we're both white men, but like a lot of our peers were white men. So I think it was like over time, we started seeing that scene sort of blow up and seeing like a lot more women and a lot more non-binary people and trans people and a lot more Black and Asian people that were like becoming like powerhouses of this particular community. And that was always, I was always really excited for that.
I would concur with Schaffer. It's great that there's more representation, just like there's, more representation in general in the culture of different people and different backgrounds, which I think is important. And, like the JT Music team, they do this festival called Nerdcore PartyCon in MPC in North Carolina that has like 3,000 people for the weekend. It's multiple days. It's so cool that it's grown to that. And they still give props to the old school, and like Mega Ram plays that festival. And so that's cool to like see it come and still live on. And, hip hop is about, hip hop is really, it's important that it speaks about like for all people, but the youths especially. And if the young people aren't like embracing nerdcore and talking about it, it's cool, but then it will die. So it's like cool that it will live on, and people, it's like punk. They'll find the history of it. And it's cool to see guys like you like doing this podcast and giving us a platform. So I don't know. I'm surprised it's been this long. Thank you for having us. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a great interview.
Yeah, like nerdcore and like the whole nerd music scene. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm cool now at school, but like last year I was sort of new at high school, and I didn't really like fit in that well. I like wasn't like super popular or whatever, because I just went to a new school and didn't have any friends. But like the nerd music was sort of like a way for me to sort of feel like, it helped me fit in. It was like great music for anyone who's ever felt like they didn't necessarily belong. So I really want to thank you guys, because nerdcore and the whole nerd music scene in general, it's all really meant a lot to me. So it's a true honor to be speaking with both of you right now.
Yeah.
Well, that comment really means a lot to me. So thank you.
So we both play in a heavy metal band and are looking to release our first music soon. So we wanted to ask you, what advice would each of you give to anybody looking to break into the independent music scene?
Making a very cool visual that like honestly shows your vibe as people, music video or whatever, that's like performance based, because there's so many people who are focused on the fashion and like, whatever, looking cool, but to have a live way that captures your energy, whether it's in studio or in a show, that's important, I think, for the first visual, because if it's really, really good, that will help, and you can make verticals of it and stuff. And yeah, that would be my main advice, other than like,
yeah, great advice.
Yeah, it's worth it, even if it costs like $1,000 to get a great video director, or $500 or whatever. Maybe you have a homie who can do you favors, but like good video is the first thing I think you need. But what do you think, Schaffer?
When you're getting to the part where you're starting to release this music to an audience, don't release anything that you don't believe in. In other words, like, don't release something just for the sake of releasing something. And I think that element has kind of always been there in indie music since the internet came along. But I feel it's especially now that so many people, their careers are content creation, that there's this idea that, to keep up, to be competitive, that you have to be on top of your schedule. And it's important that you like hit a deadline, that you get content out, that you have a new song constantly, and that you like feed this thing for some sort of like to maintain relevance. But I think it's more important that you're always working on making music that you believe in, and that is true to who you are.
So where can our viewers support you?
Dang. That's sweet. We both have Patreons, and Spotify is where the new record is out. And like, yeah.
There's two singles out right now, right?
3.
Yeah, 2. And yeah, including the one from a while ago, the No Windows, No Doors. Rage G for Trauma and 5 Ways to Kill a Tune. So 2 specifically like that we tied into the promo of the album. Yeah. The recent ones. So yeah, February 9th, it's available everywhere. So, come see us live. Come say what's up. I wish we were playing Maine. We're doing a May East Coast tour and a June West Coast tour. And I wish we were coming up to Maine. Closest will probably be is Boston, but if anyone wants to see us live. New Hampshire, Northern New England. My bad.
Yeah.
I wish we were coming up that far.
Well, Boston's not that far from us, so we'll probably be able to come.
Oh, cool. We'll get you on the guest list.
We both have our websites are just our stagenames.com, mclars.com, schafferthedarklord.com, and our websites are mostly just links of where you can find all of our other stuff. But yeah, we both have Patreons, and you'll find your way to all of the 999 releases one way or another through both of our sites.
Awesome.
So
thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It was such an awesome interview, and we're just so excited for you guys to have this album that's coming out soon, and we're just so excited for all the viewers to listen to the album because it's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you for making such amazing music and sharing it with the world. And thanks for letting us listen to it early. Like, we had never listened to an album through Dropbox before, so that was and thank you so much for doing this interview. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. So just have a great week, both of you, and just thanks again so much. We'll tell all our friends about this.
Thanks.
Them around.
Send us your music when you guys do your video.
Yeah,
totally.
We will.
Awesome.
That'll be in.
We're
recording in March.
Hitting the studio in February, but it'll probably
March 1st.
March 1st.
Yeah,
okay,
same thing.
But so it'll probably drop later on. But yeah, we're doing sort of like a 80s metal type thing, like traditional heavy,
hard rock / heavy metals,
some thrash elements. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That sounds cool. We can't wait to hear it. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This was such a fun interview.
Yeah, this was so much fun. And thank you for as always. Take care, guys, and best of luck with the tour and dropping the album and stuff. Everybody's gonna love it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You
guys are tight. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Thanks. Bye.